Part 2. When I tried to speak up about my contributions to the project's success, David launched a campaign to minimize my role and paint me as a disgruntled employee who was trying to take credit for his management achievements. After watching David accept industry recognition for work I'd done, I knew I had to say something. I couldn't let him completely erase my contributions from the record, especially when other people at our company knew how much work I'd actually done on the project. I started by talking to some of my coworkers who'd witnessed my role in saving the project. They all agreed that David was taking credit for work he hadn't done, and several of them said they'd been wondering why my name wasn't mentioned in any of the articles or presentations. My teammate Sarah said she'd been shocked to read the case study on our company website because it made David sound like a technical genius when everyone knew he'd barely understood the code I was writing. She said it was obvious to anyone who'd been paying attention that I'd been running the project. Another coworker, Mike, said he'd been in meetings where David had openly admitted that he didn't understand the technical aspects of the project and was relying on me to handle everything. Mike couldn't believe David was now claiming to have developed the solutions himself. With support from my teammates, I decided to talk to David directly about getting recognition for my contributions. I approached him privately and explained that I felt my role in the project's success had been overlooked, and that I'd appreciate being included in future presentations and interviews. David's reaction was immediate defensiveness and deflection. He said that as the project manager, he was responsible for the overall success and that individual contributors were part of the team effort. He made it sound like I was being selfish for wanting personal recognition. When I pointed out specific technical solutions that I developed and implemented, David said that those solutions had come from collaborative team discussions where he'd provided the strategic direction. He was rewriting history to make my individual contributions sound like team efforts he'd led. David also said that project managers naturally get more recognition because they're responsible for coordinating everyone's work and delivering results to clients. He made it sound like my desire for credit was a misunderstanding of how corporate recognition works. But I knew the difference between a project manager getting credit for leadership and a project manager claiming to have personally done technical work that someone else had actually performed. David wasn't just getting recognition for management, he was claiming to have done my job. When I mentioned that I'd been working 80-hour weeks while he'd barely been involved in the day-to-day work, David said that good managers delegate effectively, and that his ability to identify the right person for the job was part of his leadership skills. David's dismissal of my concerns made it clear that he had no intention of sharing credit or acknowledging my contributions publicly. He was going to continue taking full credit for the project's success, regardless of how unfair it was to the people who'd actually done the work. I decided to escalate the issue to our department director, hoping that someone higher up would understand the situation and ensure that credit was given where it was due. I put together a detailed summary of my contributions with supporting documentation. My documentation included emails showing that I'd been the one communicating with clients about technical issues, code repositories showing that I'd written most of the software, and meeting notes showing that I'd been making the key decisions about project direction. When I met with the department director, I explained the situation calmly and professionally. I said I wasn't trying to diminish David's role as project manager, but that I wanted recognition for the significant technical contributions I'd made to the project's success. The department director listened to my concerns and said she'd look into the situation. She seemed surprised to learn about the extent of my involvement and said she'd been under the impression that David had been more hands-on with the technical work. But instead of investigating my claims fairly, the department director apparently went straight to David to get his side of the story. David used this opportunity to get ahead of the situation and paint me as a disgruntled employee who was trying to undermine his authority. David told the department director that I'd been struggling with the transition from individual contributor to team player, and that my desire for recognition showed that I didn't understand how collaborative projects work. He made my legitimate concerns sound like personality flaws. He also claimed that I'd been difficult to manage during the project and had required constant guidance and oversight to deliver acceptable work. David was now portraying himself as the patient manager who'd had to coach me through challenges, rather than the person who'd relied on me to save his failing project. When the department director got back to me, her tone had completely changed. She said that while my technical contributions were appreciated, it was important to remember that David had been the project manager and was responsible for the overall success. She also suggested that my concerns about recognition might stem from unrealistic expectations about how credit is distributed in collaborative environments. She made it sound like I was being naive about corporate dynamics rather than pointing out legitimate unfairness. The department director advised me to focus on my future contributions rather than dwelling on past projects, and said that good work would eventually be recognized through normal performance review and promotion processes. But I knew that wasn't true. David was actively taking credit for my work in public forums, which meant that industry professionals and potential future employers would associate those achievements with him rather than me. This wasn't just about internal recognition, it was about my professional reputation. The most frustrating part was that David had successfully reframed the situation to make me look like the problem. Instead of being seen as someone who'd gone above and beyond to save an important project, I was now viewed as someone who couldn't handle not getting individual credit for team efforts. David also started treating me differently after I'd raised concerns about recognition. He became more micromanaging and critical of my work, looking for opportunities to document performance issues that could support his narrative about me being difficult to work with. In team meetings, David would make pointed comments about the importance of supporting team goals over individual recognition, clearly directed at me. He was using public settings to reinforce his story about me being a selfish employee who didn't understand collaboration. David also started excluding me from high-visibility projects and client meetings, saying that he needed team members who were focused on collective success rather than personal advancement. He was punishing me for speaking up about his credit theft. The irony was that David's behavior was proving my point about his character and management style. Someone who'd genuinely earned recognition wouldn't need to retaliate against employees who questioned their claims or worked so hard to control the narrative. But David was in a position of power, and had the support of upper management, while I was just an individual contributor with no allies in leadership positions. The system was set up to protect managers who took credit for their employees' work.